All right, we're going to try this again. Let's see if it goes online. And there we go. All right, we're going to try this for a third time, and we know that the third time is always the charm. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris, and this is my channel, Bar 911970. This is a great channel for anybody that likes to think for themselves, question what's going on in the world, and can see things a little bit deeper than what you are programmed. And today, we are going to be talking about the debt ceiling that has been reached today. And hopefully we'll get some new people out there to kind of learn what's going on. So I hope you will listen to this with a open mind, and you will get a dialogue going, because the more that people communicate, the harder it is for people that are in control to not only continue their propaganda, but eliminate not telling the truth, because sometimes not telling the truth is the same as lying. Now, of course, today is March 15th, 2017. It is 6:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully people are going to be able to get this signal, and I want to show something, see if it's going to register on the screen. Give me a second. I apologize, but this is how YouTube works. They want to make sure that things cannot be seen easily when it comes to showing truth. I'm pretty much used to it at this point. So if you're new here, this is something that happens on occasion when you speak truth. Less than 1% of my viewers actually get notifications. So let's see if it's going to show the debt clock. So bear with me for a second. Unfortunately, this is beyond my control. Okay. So it's not showing the screen. And of course it's showing there's no health. All right, so unfortunately I can't show the debt screen because for some reason it's not working, so I apologize. You're probably not seeing anything on the screen. That is beyond my control. But right now we are getting close to hitting the $20 trillion debt limit. And this was set by Obama about a year and a half ago to coincidentally affect the next president's agenda. Now, for those of you who think America and the United States of America Corporation is a wealthy nation, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, when you are $20 trillion in debt and the actual total U.S. debt is $68 trillion. That's the one thing they don't talk about. There is a website that I was trying to show, but it won't come up for some reason. It's called the usdebtclock.org. So that's usdebtclock.org, and it will show you in real time how fast we are really growing in our debt. And it shows the U.S. national debt at $19.9 trillion, and the total U.S. debt is $68.3 trillion. The interest alone per citizen, quote unquote citizen, and you should really learn what the legal definition of that word is almost $8,000 at $7,600 per citizen. If you think we're a wealthy nation, all I have to ask is, if you're $20 trillion in debt, how are you wealthy? So you are negative. If you look at your bank account, you would have a balance of negative $20 trillion. And what this government continues to do is borrow, quote unquote, currency from a foreign bank called the Federal Reserve. Now, the beautiful thing for them is that they send us the bill with what they call taxes. Now, unfortunately, another thing that I wanted to show was the fact that precious metals are really starting to shoot up today. We see silver up 41 cents, which may not seem like a big deal, but the average move for silver is about 10 cents on a normal day or less. So right now it's at $17.34, so it broke back up over the $17 mark. And we see gold at up almost $19 at $1,219. And you see the other metals, platinum's up 19 at $956, and palladium is up $24 at $767. It always shows when there is kind of any kind of panic or potential worry or some kind of situation that happens, people tend to flock to precious metals. Now, with it being a rigged system, because they base the price on manipulated paper markets, and this is pretty much proven at this point, it's no longer a conspiracy theory, even though for years I've been trying to tell people about this. Eventually it's going to break through, and you're going to see, probably in the next few years, prices of metals really getting out of the reach of the average person. So for me, anytime there's a discount, to me, that's a buying opportunity. Whether you believe in that or not, that's up to you. But when it comes to the U.S. debt ceiling, the Federal Reserve is not part of the United States of America Corporation. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please look up the Act of 1871 and learn things about what our government is doing that they will never tell you about, as far as what this country really is and what it's become. It's basically a corporation that feeds off of the people, where they borrow money, quote unquote, from a Federal Reserve system by selling bonds to a private owned bank. That's what the Federal Reserve is. And these bonds accrue interest over time. They send the U.S. Treasury basically a blank check, because what does the Federal Reserve sell? What do they manufacture? What do they create? So where do they get these trillions of quote unquote dollars out of thin air from? They just happen to just make it out of thin air. They make real time profit because of the interest that accrues of these bonds that they sell to the U.S. Treasury and the United States government, and they hand us the bill in the form of taxes. And your education system has told you all your life that your taxes go towards bridges and roads and things like that, which is not true. It's to repay the debt. And because of the fact, this is the scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. What they do is, let's say, for example, they lend out $10. So they lend out $10, just to keep it on an easy number to understand. Now, when you borrow money, you have to pay interest. So let's just assume there's $10 in this country. The government sold the bonds to the Fed, and they created $10. Somebody borrows that $10. Now you owe interest, because that's what happens when you borrow money. You have to pay back the principal plus the interest. So let's say it comes out to $10.10. Well, if you got all of the money that the Federal Reserve created, then how do you pay back the extra 10 cents when it doesn't exist? Well, what happens is you have to borrow another $10. So now you have $20. You pay off the $10.10, but now you owe even more interest. So this is what the national debt is all about. It's all about the debt ceiling and the fiscal cliff. They want to make it sound scary for the average person, because they don't really understand or understand how the process really works. If our own government created its own monetary system, we wouldn't need to borrow, quote unquote, money from a foreign bank. And people mistaken the Federal Reserve as part of America because it has the word federal in it. It's not a government entity, even though it seems like it. You just have to go on the website of the Federal Reserve and it'll say it itself. They're owned by shareholders. Who are those people? Well, they don't let you know everybody. But the belief system is that the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the JP Morgans, all the banks that got bailed out in 2008 own some part of interest in the Federal Reserve. So they're lending money, quote unquote, to the U.S. Treasury that helped bail out the very banks. We paid the interest while they make millions and billions gambling on Wall Street. So when they win, they pocket the money. When they lose, we pay for it. So how is that not a brilliant scam? The problem is, with the creation of the internet, their secrets can't be hidden anymore. And the truth is slowly starting to come out, but not fast enough, because the average person has no clue about the debt ceiling. And if you go to usdebtclock.org, you can see in real time the average debt per quote unquote citizen is $61,345. How many of you are going to even make that in a year, let alone be able to pay that? Now, this whole thing is an illusion. They make you think you owe this debt. We pay it because, like you hear in the 13th Amendment, where they legally define the word slavery as involuntary servitude, well, if you volunteer your servitude and decide to pay it, well, they're not going to stop you. I mean, if your next door neighbor knocked on your door and said, hey, I just won the lottery, I'm going to pay all your bills, you don't owe me anything, how many of you would say, oh, no, please don't do that? You probably would. So when it comes to the illusion of this, The dollar can only last for so long. And that is the illusion where you see prices of things going up. You think that they have increased in value. No. What happens is when you continually print more and more money, it devalues the currency. It becomes less valuable. So you need more of it to make the same purchase. And that is why, even with the lower prices of gold and silver, if you follow them against inflation, they're not there to make you rich. They're made to keep you, basically keep up with inflation. And that is why, for example, let's say the average price of gas right now, let's say is $2.50 a gallon on average. Um, you would need $2.50 fiat debt notes to pay for that. Well, one silver dime that has 90% silver is worth about $2.50 to $3. So a silver dime, even though it has a face value of 10 cents, will have the same monetary value of the $2.50 you would need from the debt note. So the metals, because they have value, actually allow you to keep up with inflation. The problem is they control it by every time they want to hammer the prices down, they just send a bunch of paper contracts onto the market, which are not backed by actual physical gold and silver. And they just literally dump millions of ounces within a span of 1 minute or less by computer program to all of a sudden influence the market and have it crash down. Now that works for a long time, but it cannot work infinitely. Because just imagine if you had a credit card, and let's say you have a $10,000 debt. You have a $10,000 limit. So you are not really making a lot of money in your job, and you're buying a lot of things on credit, and you reach the $10,000 limit. And then the bank says to you, okay, you can't pay it back. You tell them you can't pay it, and they say, okay, instead of canceling your card and making you have payment plans to catch up with your payments, they say, all right, we'll extend your credit. We'll give you another 10,000. So remember, you have to pay all the interest. So if you couldn't pay the original $10,000 debt plus interest, how are you going to pay even more when they double it? And they double it again, and they double it again. And this is what happens every time that they reach this debt ceiling. What they're saying is, we've reached the principal amount. Now, if you're not understanding what principal amount is, we'll go back to the $10. If you borrow $10, that's the principal amount. The interest, which would be, let's say, $10.10, the 10 cents extra is not principal, that's interest. So that's above the original amount. So they borrow a certain amount of quote unquote money. It's currency. There's a difference. You have to learn this. They don't include and they do not make the interest. They do this purposely. So let's just assume that the national debt stops at 20 trillion. The interest on that, let me see if we can find it. Okay. Total interest paid, and this is yearly. So we're at almost $20 trillion in debt. The total interest paid this year, $2,484,480,374,000 as it continually goes up. So they borrowed 20 trillion, let's say. That means there's an extra almost 2.5 trillion that doesn't exist. That is the interest. So the only way you could pay that interest, which is going up by the second, is to continually borrow more money. And again, when you borrow that quote unquote money, they will not give you the amount plus the interest. So it continually has to stack higher and higher. But like a house of cards, you can get it to go pretty high, but eventually it becomes unstable and it collapses in on itself. The problem is we don't know when that's going to happen. So for the past few years, there have been many people predicting that this is going to happen, and it will. But the analogy that I always use for people that may not understand or just don't get it, let's say you have a hot air balloon and you're literally just blowing air into it through your own lungs. You're not using a machine. Now, it's going to take a very long time for that balloon to start filling up. And the problem is, if you continue to blow into that balloon, eventually, because it only has a limited amount of surface area, even though it can expand and flex a little bit, if you continually blow air into that balloon, eventually it will pop. The problem is, you do not know the exact second when that's going to happen. And the longer you blow air into that balloon, the larger the explosion and the more damage it's going to create. So the problem is, instead of us basically taking our lumps and stopping borrowing this money, because we will suffer for a little while, but it's like an alcoholic that goes to the point, or let's say a drug addict who's addicted to crack. They need that continual drug to keep going, but it's killing them in the process. Now, when you go through withdrawals, your body is going to crave and desire that drug because it needed it. So you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to go through sweats. You're going to get headaches. You're going to be angry. You're going to crave that drug. But if you wait long enough, your body will eventually release all the toxins from the body and you will heal yourself. So we have to go through that problem. Now, the problem is with any drug user, the longer you postpone that, the harder the withdrawal. Here's the catch. If you never cure the problem, eventually that drug overwhelms you and kills you because you need more and more of it, and eventually it overtakes your body and your body gives up. So that's exactly what's going to be happening with our national debt, this illusion of banksters just stealing money from us and handing us the bill, and we volunteer our servitude to be able to pay it because they say do. You know, if they told you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? But yet we'll continue to do this because it's our civic duty. And if you don't, quote unquote, pay your taxes, you're not American, or you're doing something wrong. That's how they condition people through peer pressure and through emotion to be able to control. So just imagine if you had a credit card with unlimited spending and you could buy whatever you want and hand the bill to your next door neighbor and they'll pay it. They may complain. They may not be happy. They might not even like you for it. But if they continue to pay it, how long would you continue to go on a spending spree knowing that your neighbor is going to have to pay for your bill? And would you be fiscally responsible? Or would you go out and buy a whole bunch of expensive things knowing that there's no consequence and no repercussions for what you're doing? Many people would all of a sudden buy a Ferrari, buy several Ferraris, go on vacations all over the place, start buying things left and right because you don't have the responsibility of having to pay for it. Well, that's how our government works and how the Federal Reserve System is created. It's a Ponzi scheme meant to enslave people. So every time they borrow more and more, quote, money, we have to pay the interest back. Well, we don't have to, we choose to. It's because we believe it's our duty because schools program you to say that's what you're supposed to do. They gamble on Wall Street. They live very lavish lives. And we struggle more and more because every time they raise the debt ceiling and borrow more of this currency, it devalues it more and more. So you need more of it to make purchases. And the sneaky way they get around it is by, for example, especially shopping. When you're buying food, you notice your packages are getting smaller. Like, compare a box of cereal now to a box of cereal 10 years ago. They're about the same price, but not the same size. I mean, look at something as simple as ice cream. When was the last time you bought a gallon of ice cream? I don't recommend anybody getting that garbage, but if you do, you'll pay the same price for the current ice cream now than you would have 10 years ago. It's not all of a sudden that ice cream became more rare and more valuable. It's just you need more currency because they continually do this scam. So I wish I could show this right now, but thanks to YouTube, they love doing this stuff, and I could see that the live stream is not working properly, so hopefully you can hear this. I don't know if you can, but unfortunately we're being lied to. And unless people start understanding this stuff and putting a stop to it, they'll continue to do it until it finally collapses in on itself. The problem is, we'll be the ones that suffer. They have purchased many physical things with their currency. So they have lots of things that will create income once the dollar ends up losing its value or just gets to the point where it's not as valuable as it once was. So if we don't pay attention to this and allow them to continue to do this, because it's easier to let some other people do this, well, we're the ones that are going to suffer. So I don't know if you could see this. Unfortunately, my screen is completely blank, so I apologize if you weren't able to see this. I wish you could, because you could see the metals moving up in the U.S. debt clock, but you can go there yourself and check it out. And I really feel they're just going to raise it again. We're going to owe more money. It's going to devalue the currency even more. They're going to hand us the bill continuously, and they'll continue to profit off of our trust in a corrupt system. And it's unfortunate. We can change it anytime we want. We just got to get the masses to do it. And unfortunately, the masses aren't going to come here to see this. So hopefully this will show up. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. But I thank you for at least paying attention and seeing what's going on. Plenty of people are learning. Start thinking for yourselves. Get out of the banking system. Open up a federal credit union or a local credit union. Get yourself some physical gold and silver. Get out of debt. Think for yourself. Don't be afraid to question things. Stop listening to the mainstream media, and you'll be better off. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you were able to see what's on the screen. Unfortunately, that's just beyond my control. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Create a dialogue. Talk amongst yourselves. Share the information and get this out there. People need to be educated on what's really going on. The government knows this. The media knows this. The school systems know this. They're not telling you, and there's always a reason. You need to ask why. So thanks for watching. Have a great night, and don't forget to have your trolls spayed or neutered. Have a good day.